Topic to discuss today is something that I put out on Twitter. Recently, I watched a video with you all on stream about like the Rio Major, the one that just went down for Counter-Strike, and kind of the storylines and how they develop things. And like they have a 9-minute intro. Also, Dr. Seuss is not the best rapper of all time. It's Caillou. Let's be real. Jokes aside, he's more trap than rap. So similar. Either way, the whole premises of that video is it is 9 minutes of them introducing the major in Rio. And they bring on Machine Alex, who is like the GOAT of play-by-play casting and hosting, and has him VO the entire thing. But they break down step by step every single individual storyline going into that major. They talk about, you know, Zywoo, they talk about Simple and what it means, talks about Furia and the fan base there. They talk about like each individual storyline of why you should get behind certain teams like Heroic and otherwise. And kind of got me to think about what's kind of been going on in Rocket League lately. And there is some pretty cool storylines, which we'll talk about. If you guys haven't seen me tweet about the Gen G situation and all that kind of stuff. But the one that's always kind of been round for a while is NA versus EU, which I think is pretty low-hanging fruit. And in the beginning, it was definitely that. You had two regions that were constantly competing against each other. That's all it was. So the big narrative or the macro narrative was always, which region's better? NA, EU. What's the fight? Historically, it's been Europe. While EU has not had as many teams towards the top be as competitive, they've always basically won. The best example I can give is I think in season 6 or 7, 4 of 4 NA teams won their groups, and then EU Vitality went through Cloud9, NRG, and G2 and still won. It's usually how it goes. So season 1 was iBuyPower Cosmic, Kronovi. Of course, the poster boy has to win. Flipside technically threw that and should have dominated. I don't know why they didn't. Make the roster change. They bring in Greasy. Season 2 in Amsterdam is Flipside Tactics. So that's, and I'm going to write these down so I don't forget. 1 NA, 1 EU. Season 3, and this is becoming now, you know, Turbo Pulse of Dominance. Season 3 was Northern Gaming. Turbo steps in as the sub. They win that one. And then they win again with Gale Force with the reforming of KDOP, Turbo, and Violent Panda. They got together during the offseason at a DreamHack. They lost to Flipside Tactics there, who were trying out with Mystic. And then they just won everything. And then they did it again when they signed under Dignitas in season 5, where Energy took second place there. In the next season, in season 6, we then saw something crazy happen for the first time in 3 seasons. NA won, and convincingly, because Cloud9 perfected what Dignitas did. The passing plays, all of that stuff, Origin goes to Dignitas, but Cloud9 perfected it with Squishy doing the high flying stuff and slamming that down to Gimmick so he could put it away. And we saw Gimmick deemed as like the best ball chaser, but in a good way. You know, the on the ball play, constant challenges, go, 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 right? In season 7, we then saw Heartbreak for G2, where we saw EU win yet again. Like I mentioned, you know, they get to the finals, all NA dominance and groups and all that kind of stuff. Things are going great. Energy won their group 2-0. G2 won their group 2-0. Rogue won their group 2-0. Cloud9 won their group 2-0. And despite all that and having all the favors in their way, Energy loses to Vitality, Cloud9 loses to Vitality, and then G2 also loses to Vitality. That 0-second goal is pure heartbreak. Listening to Rizzo talk about it, big pain. Big pain. We then go to season 8, and NA bounces back again. And what's crazy is that is the first time that in 8 seasons, Garrett was able to lift the trophy. You saw the emotions and all the craziness that went down with that. But even still, it went to game 7 against Vitality. And before that, it was Vitality and Dignitas also going to 7. So your top 4 was 2 NA, 2 EU. And as the years have progressed, it has definitely gotten closer. It's not just a one-team race anymore. Usually you have like a favorite. Recently, it's been BDS that has just showed that they are leagues ahead of other teams and everybody else is trying to play catch up. And you get this talk of depth or inconsistency, whatever you want to take it as. But in NA, you usually see the top 5 that are always the top 5, and EU you see just throw some darts at a board and figure it out. Nobody knows what the heck's going on over there. We had done 2 seasons of nothing because of the COVID situation and pandemic. We just didn't have a world championship, so it was only regional based stuff anyway. So to me, that doesn't really matter. And overall, that means that there's five events that have gone in EU's favor. No, 6, because BDS just won as well. So there's 6 world championships in favor of EU, and 3 in favor of NA. But since I think season 6, it's alternated, if I remember correctly. 5 was EU, 6 was NA, 7 was EU, 8 was NA, 9 was EU, or 11 was EU. So it is alternated since season 5. Since season 5, it has been EUNA, EUNA, EUNA. It's gone back and forth every single time, which I think is pretty cool. It's something that talks about the discussions of how things come to be and the evolution of our scene, as well as starting to see some of these expansion regions come in. South America, I think, looks really good. You're seeing BEMS and the rest, like Lost on that club team, look excellent. You're seeing Falcons no longer just dominate the region. You're seeing teams like KRN come in. Now Rule 1, shouts to Sunless Khan and in Civic. You've got Twisted Minds over there. Like, you're starting to see some depth. You've got new young emerging talent with CJ retiring. You are starting to see with Kansas City Pioneers over the last couple with Banana Head and those guys. You're also seeing Power. Some of the old guard like Taurus stick around. So there is more and more being entertained. And I think that overall that there's still the narrative of NA versus EU towards the top, because if you look at the previous history, the top 4 is almost always those two. But in 2021-2022 season, we saw for the first time at the World Championship since, I think, season 4, where Chiefs made top 4, we got to see the fact that Furia, Sam's #1 team, made top 4 as well, which I think is awesome. I think it does a lot. They were able to take down Moist in a thrilling Game 7, 2 seconds left kind of situation. It was probably one of the most hyped moments at the World Championship this last year, probably because G2 versus BDS was ugly. It was really ugly. So the conversation that I guess I'm trying to have, despite the historics and all that stuff, is there is so much more to this scene than just NA versus EU. And that seems to be the general consensus of most people as well. I put out a post asking this exact same thing. I tried to very quickly, and this was put out very recently. How do you guys feel about it? You know, are you really strongly, heavily going to defend your region to your dying breath? Are you kind of over it? Or do you just not really care? You know, like, you know what? I support my teams, so be it. And there's a bunch of different takes over it. And I think a lot of us, especially the ones that have been here for a long time, think that it's such low-hanging fruit. And that's kind of, I agree with Corelli on those regards, is that, you know what? I also agree. I think NA versus EU, while I think it's an easy thing to follow along, and it's for the fan base, it's a really nice narrative to where, like, if I go to a world championship or a major and I sit there and go, hey, who am I rooting for? You know what? My NA team has lost. I'm going to bandwagon the next NA team. That's great and all. I think it actually is a detriment to the space in general. I think the problem is that when you look at how the conversation is applied, and I do agree with you, Ugg, that the desk definitely perpetuates it. I think there's, you know, the loudmouth analysis, as people have stated it. It's easy for me to just be like, this team's the best. Your region stinks, blah, blah, blah. I wish there was more focus on the things like Gen G or the really big storylines about individual players. And Cynex could help with this as well. You know, talking about the ability to break down some of the rookies and what they've gone through. I talked about this on stream the other day about how it's weird to me that creators like Sunless Khan, Waitin, myself, I've only done it once with the Metznaris documentary, and it's still got a long way to go. But, like, why is Sunless the one that has to push forward the Sandrock Gaming narrative? Why are these documentary pieces not done by Psyonix? And I understand there's a lot that goes into those, but those are the types of things that allow you to gravitate towards other things. I mean, shoot, the tweet that I put out kind of paints a picture as well. I said, wow, Gen G's story is wild. They have 2 EU players who attended Worlds teams with no prior scrims during the offseason. You saw Nolly, who was with K-Corp, who really put them out on the map, right? People forget that Kamata was streaming to 30, 40, 50,000 viewers already. Nolly joins that team, starts the interaction, shows how strong that fan base is. And all of a sudden, K-Corp is a dominant team and a very recognized team, which is ironic because during the offseason at WePlay, K-Corp won. That K-Corp team on paper during the offseason with WePlay, they dominated. They looked incredible. And then they didn't show up for the next 2 splits. Format-wise, whatever the reasons you want to give, they fell short. They did not look good. Yet we don't talk about it. You look at Jack, who built a 1 super team. It didn't work out. While they still went to the World Championship and had lackluster results, enters the offseason, almost retires, because of the contract stuff going on, and instead finds himself in North America with another player living in Canada with the Shopify Rebellion facilities under Gen G. And then they bring an up-and-coming talent, Chronic, who has had the talent for a long time, but has decided he always wanted to play with two-piece and has turned down opportunities. I know plenty of teams offered him tryouts, but he's like, no, I want to play with two-piece. And now that two-piece and Chronic are separate, I think two-piece is way better off playing with Shopify and at least being somewhat competitive. And you see Chronic on the best team in North America right now in an incredible environment and just vibing. They have dominated two first place finishes and a second place finish, or was it 2 second place and a first place? They lost to V1, they won one, and then I forget the other one. I forget what the last one was. Either way, yeah, 2 second place finishes and a first place. Oh, so it's like we can talk about those types of narratives and those types of things, and we can identify and figure out those things and be, hey, I'm a fan of this team because I see what they went through and how they've gotten here, and I support this team because, you know what? They are a good mentality. They're super professional. They keep their heads up. They work hard. Oh, I support this team because this player is a villain and he demos a lot. Those are the types of things I'd much rather have people gravitate towards, whether it be organizations that support the scene and the space and do what they can, or players that go above and beyond to help and do this and that. Two things that help with that. Number one, we as fans, as I punch my mic, we as fans also have to make sure that we put those things forward. Like, we as a fandom need to be better about those things and educate better about those things. And that also carries over to the broadcast, the podcast, and stuff like that, which is why I'm such a huge fan of what these podcasts are becoming with the Chalkcast, the CJ show, Off the Post with Karma and Kronovi. The people that have been in the space and the scene that can talk about and interview these players and get them to open up, because it is something that is always lacked in Rocket League. People for the mainstream media as well as big figures in esports have talked about the one and major thing that is lacking from Rocket League esports is the personalities, which is tough because you are talking young kids who are a little bit more shy, aren't as outgoing, haven't really developed as people yet, and it's tough. And over time, as the fan base and the viewer base and the player base all get older, there's more history, and you start to see some of these players. Like, I remember when I interviewed Garrett in season 1, 15-year-old kid, couldn't get 2 words out of him, and now he's probably one of the best and most articulate players on camera. This stuff takes time. You don't see personalities like Rizzo come around often. So I think as players get older and more comfortable, you are starting to see that out of the guys on Moist, and you're starting to see PR Archie, who again continues to double down on stuff and talking about how he doesn't think any of his previous teammates are mechanical, yet they're going to the major as one of the best teams in Quadrant. And like, there's certain things like that. Like, these narratives are things that make us invested. Do you guys remember the days where Reddles was talking ish and we wanted to see Reddles versus BDS, the Mickey Moon storylines, things like that? Those are the things that I think we need to discuss, and they don't always have to be drama or rivalries. It just has to be things that have like more than face value. Like, there is so much history in this game that we can go to, and it's going to take the casters, the team streams, everybody with the platform to continue to push those things forward. So I think NA versus EU is low-hanging fruit. And I guess the question I asked you guys, like I am in the title of this video, which side are you on? While I think the NA versus EU is an easy narrative and it's an easier way to bring people into the space, I think it is important that we continue to push the other storylines that are more important, that allow us to grab to. If you see a player you don't like doing something, stop supporting them, find somebody that does. It's not that difficult. So if you're a fan, and this is a question that comes from somebody in chat, if you're a fan and you're one to promote it, I think it's one of those where you're in the conversations, when you are part of the Reddit discussions, when you're in a stream, when you are watching and partaking in these, be vocal. You know, if you are at a major and you're sitting there watching, talk to people next to you and have that discussion and be like, oh yeah, this is my favorite team. Who are you rooting for? Oh, why are you rooting for them? Again, not everybody's going to be comfortable doing that, and I'm not asking everybody to do it. I'm just saying, if you feel comfortable and you are interacting with like-minded people that are watching the sport and they want to, you know, become invested or become friendly, sometimes all it takes is that person that's willing to say, hey, yeah, I'm rooting for this team because of this. I think this is a really cool thing. You have to advocate for your fan bases and not just say, you know, NA is good again, EU is good again, etc. You know, I think it's all fun and good and banter and stuff like that. And I have no qualms with someone being like, oh, G2's out, So I'm rooting for Space Station because of the other NA team that's still in it. I get it. That's totally fine. That's totally fair. But I hope that's not preventing you from rooting and cheering for other teams and clapping and applauding good moments or becoming fans of other teams and players and situations because they're putting forth the effort and should be rewarded for those efforts. Again, I'm not saying that you have to do it. I'm not saying that anybody is required to do it. And by all means, you know what? Maybe it's just not your thing. But I do think that the NA versus EU narrative is getting pretty old, and there's a lot better conversations that we can have. And these are also things that we should hold others like Psyonix accountable for. If we're going to do these videos and, you know, people like Cole and Stumpy are going to put all this time and effort into recap videos and talk about some of these narratives, we got to make sure the storylines are there, because you go and look at when they do put the effort in and they give us the like greatest overtime in Rocket League history videos. I, as a fan, will never forget that moment. I was happy to be there for that moment and see it live. I know what that feeling is like, but the general audience doesn't. So we have to take it upon ourselves to push those things forward. So that's kind of where I'm at. Again, trying to make Rocket League esports as good as possible. Hold me accountable. I'm going to hold you guys accountable, and we're going to try to continue to push these storylines. And in videos as well, when I start doing recaps and stuff like that, as I try to amplify and make them bigger and better than what they were. These are the types of things that I want to make people mindful of when I do my recaps, of saying like, hey, these are storylines coming in, as well as this is the stakes. These are the narratives. These are former teammates. Those types of things are really important. That is what we got for today's video. Again, NA versus EU, which side are you on? Are you talking about, you know what, I die for my region? Am I a, hey, I don't really care and we should move on from it? If so, let me know your favorite storylines, your favorite things. What are some of the biggest moments that you were like, you know what, this moment was really cool and seeing it come to fruition was awesome? That's the kind of stuff that I want to hear you guys talk about. Let me know in the comments down below. But that's going to do it for today's video. As always, like, subscribe, notifications. We'll see you in the next one.